Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming. I appreciate every one of you, whether you're watching me on YouTube or on Rumble. One of our commentators say, time for the most unpopular and incompetent federal government to resign after this clear result in Thuringia and Saxony and make way for new federal elections immediately. I see this comment and many other sentiments coming from Germany. Today, I learned that the car manufacturer Volkswagen, which in English they say Volkswagen, it's called Volkswagen, has to cut costs. So the job guarantee canceled, compulsory redundancies, and plant closures possible. This is according to the Focus magazine in Germany. Additionally, I also read a comment today saying that it is a disgrace what the traffic light coalition is doing to our automobile industry. Sanctions, bans, and an emerging economic war with China are ruining Germany as a manufacturing location for automobiles. In addition, there are serious management errors on the part of the Volkswagen group. And I think that we have to discuss what's happening in Germany. Germany is or was the economic powerhouse in Europe, and myself, I live in Germany. And between 2015 and I would say the early of 2022, the 50 euro had really good value. For 50 euro, you could have bought lots of groceries for two people, maybe for 3-4 days, and you would live a really good life. Now, if you want to buy a healthy food in Germany, something that is not poisonous, something that doesn't have all these chemicals and seed oils, and something, if you're an animal based or you eat animal meat and you don't want to be poisoned by the hormones and by all the crap that they feed these animals, poor animals, I would say, then you have to pay at least 100 euro for your groceries. How about that? And the salaries are the same. The inflation is skyrocketing, the living standards are dropping, and especially among the middle class and below middle class, and also for the pensioners, the people who stopped working after 62, 63, 64, 65 years old. And when you walk in the streets at night, you will always see older German people collecting empty bottles from the bins, because one bottle is 25 cents, and the pensions of these people after their 50 years or 40 years in the workforce is not enough. Now, I came to Germany in October 2015, and when I left Syria, I was full with, I would say, rage because of what the NATO countries have done to my country. I mean, destruction, supporting the terrorists with cash, money, indoctrination, training, weapons, and everything. Tens of billions of dollars were spent on these so-called rebels to topple Assad from power. Now, this has led to a huge influx of refugees, and if you watch the mainstream media, they will always tell you that all Syrians or Syrian refugees have fled from Assad's dictatorship. And I'm sure that you haven't seen anything else than that, or the opposite of this, or anything slightly different from this. And they completely undermine or underestimate the influence of these terrorist groups and what they did to the Syrians. And there is a general consensus among the mainstream journalists that it's Assad. Now, the truth of the matter is that, of course, some of the Syrians escaped from Assad. Some of them hold guns against Assad. They were militants, so they had to escape for their lives. Some of them were from the families of ISIS. Some of them were from the families of al-Nusra or from the FSA families. So they escaped. That's true. And some of these groups, they had a popular support. So the popular support, they escaped to Turkey. And from Turkey, they started moving to Europe, right? Now, the mainstream narrative is that the refugees had to go from Turkey all the way to Germany. So you have to know that between Turkey and Germany, there are multiple countries. We have Greece, we have Hungary, we have Czech Republic, we have Poland, Germany. So, but the vast majority of them have chosen to go to Germany. Now, the official narrative is that the Syrians arrived to the borders of Germany and Angela Merkel had to accept them, right? Because those are humanitarian refugees and you have to accept them. Now, I'm in no way or shape against receiving refugees. I myself is from Syria and I came to Germany in 2015. However, saying that everyone who came from Syria are politically persecuted people is incorrect. Many, many people left the country because of the instability, because of the economic crisis for good opportunities. And some people just came because it's an opportunity, because there was an open door policy in Germany. Everybody knew about it. There were secret or closed groups on Facebook organizing such trips to Germany, and I was part of these groups. I read and watch and see what they're writing there, and they were organized trips for thousands of people to come to Germany. So when I arrived to Germany, I opened my arms to every political force here because I was naive and I was misled by the concept that these politicians are misled and they don't know what's happening in Syria. Now in 2024, I truly think that they know what's happening in Syria. I just have to sneeze, so I have to. Excuse me, the light is exactly directly to my face, so sometimes I sneeze because of the brightness of the light. So I wanted to open channels with the political forces here and try to tell them what's happening in my country. So the first political party that I opened to and I tried to open channels with was the Linke party. Back then was the left-wing party in my mind, that they are anti-imperialist party and they would understand what's happening in Syria, right? And good enough, I contacted one of the politicians from the Linke party in Stuttgart. Back then, I was living in Stuttgart, and I spoke to him, and he was very much excited. Like someone from Syria, he has a different opinion, and we are an anti-imperialist party, etc. So let's host him. And I wanted to give a presentation of what's happening in Syria and explain to them. And they're from the opposition party. So a week later, he contacted me again and he said that your opinion about Israel, for us, it will create problems and rift in the party, and it could put us in jeopardy and problems could rise for us. So they canceled the event completely. Now, the other party, which invited me to give a lecture about Syria, was the AfD. AfD is the alternative for Germany, and in Germany, the mainstream media call it a far right, blah, 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 and all these things. Now, for me, what's the priority for Syria? The priority for Syria is to tell the Germans what's happening in the country and also the foreign policy of Germany. Why would I care what the internal policy of any political party would be? What I care is about sanctions against Syria, and I care about not sending weapons to Syria and creating all this mayhem, which is creating the refugee crisis. So I gave this lecture or presentation to the AfD politicians, and I explained what's happening in Syria, and I also explained the root causes of the refugee crisis, and also told them that there is a segment in the Syrian refugees, those who believe in Salafist Islamic approach, those are not going to integrate. So I tried to draw a line and also explain the differences between different Islamic school of thoughts in Syria, and also explain to them that in Syria we have people who believe in the Islamic teachings and they keep it for themselves. They don't intervene in other people's affairs. They don't try to impose, and those are the majority in Syria. But we have a portion from the Syrians who were indoctrinated after 2011 and before that in the 80s during the Muslim Brotherhood times. And they believe in Salafi Islam and Wahhabi Islam, Takfirism. And those people are not going to integrate in Germany. And integration for these people is just an illusion. Now, this was in 2016, early 2016, right? And fast forward in 2019, it seems that one of the mainstream media outlets, they found out that I gave a lecture for the AfD. So they made a campaign against me. They smeared me. They called me far right. They called me all sorts of names, a fascist, a neo-Nazi, blah, 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 blah. And all these things have really affected me and impacted me. And I was really sad because I'm not the far right, and I know myself I'm not the far right, and I don't believe in the ideals of the far right. I never been a far right person, never been to any political party that is far right. I always been an anti-imperialist person. I believe in multipolarity, and I believe in equality among the people, and equality in terms of the economic opportunities, not the economic outcomes, but the opportunities, that everyone has to have an equal opportunity, and then they can prove themselves if they are fit to become of a higher, let's say, social status or economic status. Anyways, and in 2020, I also attended a conference organized by the Green Party, the party of Annalena Baerbock. And when I stepped inside the conference room with a friend of mine, he is now a party member of the Sahra Wagenknecht coalition, which is the left-wing party that has scored considerable points now in these recent elections in Thuringia and Saxony. And we were together in this place, and we were again attacked by the organizers and by the Syrian members of this Green Party, and they, like, I mean, the assaults that we received there, I feel shy even repeating it in my mind. And they smeared us, they called us names, and later we were kicked out of the conference. So we were open to communicating with different political parties, and then I realized that they know what's happening in Syria, and they don't care about our truth or our story, and they have a political agenda. And I realized that they wanted desperately to receive these hundreds of thousands of refugees for ideological and political agendas that they have for their countries, for economic reasons, for demographic reasons, and they don't care about humanitarianism. And what proves this point is what's happening now in Gaza. What's happening in Gaza with the killing and the slaughterhouse in the Gaza Strip proves that these politicians do not care about humanity or humanitarian catastrophe, or try to help the people of Palestine to achieve some justice, right? So all this now is blatantly in front of our eyes, and nobody can come and say, oh, in 2015 they received a million Syrian refugees because they were good-hearted people, but then for Palestine they sent bombs to kill all these tens of thousands of Palestinians. Things have changed for me as well. My convictions have developed. In 2015 and 16, I wasn't the same thing. And now I have a completely different perception on refugee crisis, on migration, and on foreign policy, and also on the intentions of the politicians. Back then, I thought they are misled. Now I believe that they have bad intentions. Those are completely two different things. Now we're living in a situation in Germany that the economic conditions and situation is also crumbling. And in parallel, we have a migration and refugee crisis. Now, I'm a migrant in Germany. And of course, I want for the migrants to integrate. I think that assimilation is impossible, but I do believe that people can integrate in new environments. I myself, I'm integrated. I'm not like saying that I become a German. That's no way. It's not possible. Even if in the future, if I get a German passport, I'm not going to become a German. I will always be a Syrian of Armenian background, but I live in Germany. I have a German passport. I have integrated in Germany. I learn the language. I work. I pay taxes, and at the same time, also I'm married to a German woman. Right? This is how I identify myself. I'm not going to come and lie to you and say, "Oh, look, I become a German." This some of these Syrian refugees, they come to Germany, and when they receive their German passport, and I've seen multiple videos of it, they take their Syrian passport and they start to tear it apart. I don't think that's a noble thing to do. I don't think that you have to shit on your country in order to prove that you have become a good German. This is just in my opinion. Now, with the refugee crisis, and in parallel when the war in Ukraine started in 2022, and Germany's decision to support Ukraine as long as it takes, which means that we have to send our taxpayer money to Ukraine, tens of billions of dollars going to Ukraine, and also sending weapons, ammunition, hardware, technology, intelligence, and all these things, right? So they're taking this money from our pockets. Now, at the end of every year, when we do our tax declaration, they ask us in the tax declaration if we want to pay taxes for the church. And I'm seriously thinking of ticking the bar and send my money to a church. But the problem is some of these churches also here, they have become a pro LGBTQ plus, which is something negates. I'm not against the LGBT people. I'm just against changing a religion in order to appease another ideology. Christianity doesn't accept that. But anyways, they're waving the LGBT flags even in the churches here. Now, with this money, I think that the right thing to do is to ask the people if they want to send money to Ukraine, just like they're asking us if we want to finance the church. And the same way they have to ask if we are happy with sending our money to Israel, which is killing all these babies in the Gaza Strip. I think those are legitimate demands. Why would they ask us if we want to send the money to the church, but they don't ask us if we want to send our money to Ukraine? And accordingly, many people start to get frustrated because once you start sending tens of billions of dollars to a foreign country and you start printing money, it will create an inflation, and inflation is going to come from the pockets of the people because the prices of the groceries will skyrocket, and then the financing of this circle of money printing, it's going to come from the pockets of the people, right? That's what I said at the beginning with the groceries. So long story short, the economic situation in Germany is not in its best shape with inflation and the GDP and the purchasing power, and also, most importantly, the industrial sector. And many of the industries are closing in Germany because the investment environment is not in a good shape, and they have better opportunities in other countries where energy prices are not as expensive as it is here. Therefore, companies like Volkswagen, Mercedes are suffering, and therefore the Chinese EV companies, for example, electric vehicles, are not only competing with Germany, they're not even asking about Germany any longer. They have invaded, not in the bad terms, in the European markets. And the German mainstream press, they had to smear the Chinese electronic vehicles for making exclusive deals with Hungary and sending their EV cars there, because now they can't compete with China, and therefore all this bulldogging and trade war against China, it's just fruitless. They can't stop the Chinese growth in any way, in technology, in semiconductors, in chips, in electric cars, in different manufacturing products. They cannot really compete, so they have to impose sanctions and they have to put high taxes on the Chinese products. And I'm not here to say good things about any other country, but if we believe in free market, we have to believe in the Chinese right to export and produce this type of products and send it all around the world without these sanctions and manipulation and all sorts of actions that the EU, Germany, and other countries are running against China. So in this weekend we had the elections in Germany, and this was shocker for the German mainstream. And I don't know why they are in shock. This is something very natural after a sequence of failures by the current government and the government before that. Now we have the ample government, which means the traffic light government, which consists of, for those who don't know, by the SPD, the Social Democratic Party, the Green Party, and also the Free Democratic Party, which is in center right. This is according to the mainstream. So we have center left parties and center right party, three parties in coalition. And before that, it was the Christian Democratic Party, headed by Angela Merkel. And with them is the Social Democratic Party, the SPD. Again, now under these two coalition governments, there was the refugee crisis, the migration crisis, and also this economic crisis. So the people are looking to blame who is responsible for this. If you can't blame the politicians, then who are you going to blame, right? So the elections happened in two federal states, Thuringia and Saxony. And what I'm going to read for you now from an article in, I think this was from the Political, those are anti, let's say, AfD and anti-Sarah Wagenknecht coalition websites, what I'm going to read for you. So they are for the establishment parties in Germany, just for you to know the terminologies and the wordings before we read the article. So German far right wins first major election since World War II, right? Germany's far right claimed its biggest electoral success since World War II, winning a regional vote in the east of the country on Sunday. The triumph of the anti immigrant Alternative for Germany AfD in a region that was under communist control during the Cold War is a huge blow to Germany's political center, especially for the three parties of the ruling coalition of Chancellor Olaf Scholz, which suffered significant losses. Now, there are two hints here. One of the hints that this is the first time a far right, they call it a far right, a political party wins since World War II. They are indicating that before that they were the Nazis. And then we have to also a contradicting statement here that they say that the triumph of the AfD was in a communist control areas during the Cold War. So they are either Nazis or communists, right? Now, in 2019, as you can see, those are the electoral results in 2019. This was in Thuringia. As you can see, the Linke Party, which was the left-wing party, they had a 31%, the highest in 2019. And the Linke Party now in 2024, it's like they don't even exist in the elections. And in contrast, the Sahra Wagenknecht party, which was newly formed and deserted from the Linke party, they received 15.8%. The biggest winner was the AfD, 32.8%. And then comes the CDU, 23%. The SPD, which is in the coalition now, in the federal coalition, they received 6.1%. And the Greens, they received 3.2%, and the FDP, which is the Free Democratic Party, 1.1%, which means the Greens and the FDPs are not going to be part of the federal or the regional parliament in Thuringia. Two governing coalition parties are not going to be in the parliament, in the regional parliament, and the SPD only 6.1% in this case. So the AfD came in first in the state of Thuringia with close to 33% of the vote, a result that will prompt much soul searching as to how the center failed to stop the electoral re-emergence of the far right despite the AfD's growing extremism. It's really funny for me that this journalists, they don't know why the center is losing and why the AfD and the parties like the Sahra Wagenknecht coalition are rising. Seriously, they don't know. A new populist left party, the Sahra Wagenknecht Alliance, which is led by a former member of East Germany's old Communist Party, finished third in both states. The surge of parties on the extremes of the political spectrum will likely be seen as another blow to Scholz's already weak coalition government. So this is almost the same results that happened in this is in Saxony. Again, the AfD had a big surge, and the CDU lost a little bit, but not much. And also the Sahra Wagenknecht came in the third place again. So those are big wins for the anti-current coalition party. So I'm not going to read much, let's say, from this article because the rest are just smearing these two political parties who scored big chunk of these votes. But just for you to see on this map, let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. No, this is the last thing that I can do. So this is in the Saxony up and Thuringia is down. And you can see yourself the results again, just in clear sights for you to know what's happening in Germany. And this will all have its repercussions on the geopolitics of Europe and also in the foreign policy levels. That's why it's important to shed light on these parties and what do they stand for in the different geopolitical conflicts. But more importantly, we have to see, for example, the Sahra Wagenknecht coalition, which they call the far left, they received votes from other parties. The people who voted in 2019, for example, for Linke, 76,000 of them, they changed their mind from the left-wing Linke party to Sahra Wagenknecht. Those who were undecided and they didn't know who to vote in 2019, they participated in the voting and 46,000 of them voted for the Sahra Wagenknecht coalition. From the CDU, which is the center-right, they 43,000 of them, like imagine they came from a capitalist party into a more socialist party voting for Sahra Wagenknecht. The AfD, which is they call far right, who voted in 2019 for AfD, voted for Sahra Wagenknecht, and similarly for SPD and Grüne. So you see the distribution of the votes. The people who voted for other parties started to vote for Sahra Wagenknecht, and these people were not necessarily left wing, as you can see that the people who voted for AfD and CDU and other parties, they started also voting for Sahra Wagenknecht. This raises lots of good questions, and I saw one of which on a page of an MP in Hungary. Is from the president's party of Hungary, and he says that the immigration policy broke Germany into two. Uh, so this will also reflect on the European Union, and he says that if the European Union follows the immigration policy of the EU, then they have to change this policy, because this will also divide the European Union into two, between pro and anti. Now, I'm not against. I'm myself as a migrant. I always mention this. I'm not against migration, especially for the people who apply and come to Germany, or even if they come as a refugee and they work, learn the language, and participate in the society. And most importantly, they integrate. They don't pose any security threats. They don't hold guns. They don't hold knives and all these things. I mean, this is something is happening regularly now in Germany, unfortunately, and there is a hyper focus, let's say, on the migrants or the refugees' crimes, some of which are from the country, and this is creating very negative sentiments among the German people. So, also, it's on the shoulders, it's the responsibility of the migrants. It's not only the responsibility of the Germans, but also the migrants and the refugees to integrate and be a positive contribution and present a positive contribution to the society, instead of creating problems or committing any sort of crimes. Of course, the percentage of the people who commit crimes may be 1%, but it's amplified in the press, in the era of social media, and those are heinous crimes like rape or knife attacks. Those will always create negative sentiments, and this will give more scoring points or credit for these parties, especially the Sahra Wagenknecht and also the AfD, those who are against mass migration or open door policies. Now, people always think that the being an anti-mass migration is always the far right talking about, but no, also the left-wing parties, especially the traditional old-school socialist parties, are also against mass migration, open-door policies, no sovereignty, like everyone who is able to come to Germany welcome and receives let's say a refugee status or an asylum, and then in 3 years they would receive a German passport, right? So some people, even on the left, they oppose this. Now, who is afraid of the AfD and the Sahra Wagenknecht? This is a very important question, and I found a brilliant article about Sahra Wagenknecht that is written by Thomas Fazi, our friend on Syriana Analysis, who participated on this show multiple times. And I really want you guys to focus on this article with me, because it's brilliantly written and also explains every aspect of the Sahra Wagenknecht policies, internal, domestic, and external. And accordingly, we understand why they hate the Sahra Wagenknecht party. Few would have predicted that Germany, long known for having the continent's most boring politics, would become the epicenter of Europe's new populist revolt, let alone one coming from both the right and the left. And yet, this is exactly what is happening. The real surprise, however, was the impressive performance of a new left populist party launched a few months prior by the icon of the German radical left, the Sahra Wagenknecht Alliance, BSW. More than anything, the elections revealed that post-reunification Germany remains neatly divided along its former borders, while Western Germans are also signaling growing dissatisfaction with the current SPD-Green FDP coalition, but remaining within the bounds of mainstream politics. Eastern Germans are revolting against the political establishment themselves. So the first revolt, or this political peaceful uprising, which is translated in these electoral results, coming from the people themselves, and especially from Eastern Germany. For now, Wagenknecht has ruled out forming regional coalition. coalition governments with the AFD, as well as with any party that supports arms deliveries to Ukraine, which means most mainstream parties. So she wouldn't participate in any coalition government in these federal states if they are for sending arms to Ukraine. Though Wagenknecht tends to avoid framing her party in tired left-right terms, its platform can best be described as left conservative. You remember when I hosted the former ambassador of the UK to Syria, Peter Ford, who is now from the Workers' Party of Britain with George Galloway. He's a co-founder, and they are also conservative left, right? This is exactly the same trend happening now in Germany with the Sahra Wagenknecht coalition. So, in short, this means it mixes demands that would once have been associated with the socialist, labor, left, interventionist, and redistributive government policies to regulate capitalist market forces, higher pensions and minimum wages, general welfare and social security policies, taxes on wealth, with positions that today would be characterized as culturally conservative. So, first and foremost, a recognition of the importance of preserving and fostering traditions, stability, security, and sense of community. So it's more collectivist approach, let's say, from the Sahra Wagenknecht coalition. They want to give higher pensions to the older people. They want to relieve some of the taxes. They want to impose probably higher taxes on the wealthy people in Germany, and they are going to also foster traditions and a sense of community. It's more a collective identity approach, let's say, unlike the AFD in this case. So this inevitably entails more restrictive immigration policies and the rejection of the multiculturalism dogma, in which minorities refuse to recognize the superiority of common rules, threatening social cohesion. As the party's founding text reads, immigration and the coexistence of different cultures can be enriching. However, this only applies as long as the influx remains limited to a level that doesn't overburden our country and its infrastructure, and as long as integration is actively promoted and successful. I still remember when I gave this lecture in 2016 for the AFD, I just said exactly the same thing. But that back then, it was characterized as a far right talking point, and it wasn't. And it wasn't. For me, it was most importantly is to do some background check, especially when people coming from a war zone, and some of these people could be fighters, they could be militants. And now, once we are here, we always see on our TVs that someone is captured from the terrorist side or even from the government side, and they say this was fighting alongside the Syrian army and he committed war crimes, we have to capture him. And similarly, it applies on these terrorists, and they say, oh, we captured someone who was affiliated with ISIS, or he fought and he executed Syrian army soldiers, and then we have to capture him, but they don't deport them. That's the problem. Many of these former terrorists or people who create problems, they are not deported, and they still live among us. And after a few months or few years, they just again walk free and they continue their approach. And I don't think that these people could be changed. But from the Syrian side, in my opinion, that the people in Syria, they don't want these people back. And many people in Syria say, oh, finally, we got rid of these people who made problems in our country, and now they went to Germany. Let them stay there. Why would we receive them, right? This is what they say in Syria. I'm just delivering to you what the Syrians say in Syria. Now, we have people in Germany, they're saying the same thing, something that was considered far-right talking point just a few years ago. This is also why Wagenknecht places a strong emphasis on the importance of national sovereignty and is highly critical of the European Union, not only because the EU is fundamentally anti-democratic and prone to oligarchic capture, but because it cannot be otherwise, given that today the nation state remains the main source of people's collective identity and sense of belonging, and therefore the only traditional institution, or at least the largest, through which it is possible to organize democracy and achieve social balance. In short, Zara Wagenknecht is anything but your typical Western leftist. Now, this is partly to do with the fact that she was born on the other side of the Iron Curtain in former East Germany in 1969. She became interested in philosophy and Marxist economics as a teenager, but the end of the socialist GDR in 1989 was, according to her biographer Christian Schneider, quote, the moment in time when the politician Wagenknecht was born. She experienced it as a unique horror. Like many East Germans, she believed in a reformed socialism, not in embracing West Germany's capitalist path. Now, I want to ask you a question here. Does it really worry you that Zara Wagenknecht was born in communist Germany under the GDR and she would pursue some of a socialist economic approach? I would like to hear your opinion because my audience are, let's say, diverse. People are from the capitalists, people are socialists, people are communists, people are in the middle, people are just caring about the foreign policy. Let me know your opinion. I would like to know where do you stand on. It's also a test for me to see on which political and economic side do you stand on. That would be really brilliant. So, when in 2007, the PDS is the party of democratic socialism, when in 2007, the Party of Democratic Socialism merged with a splinter of the SPD to give birth to the Linke. This was the party that I told you about at the beginning of the show, that I opened links with them and I wanted to give a presentation about Syria and they rejected it at the end. This is when in 2007, the Party of Democratic Socialism and the Social Democratic Party, some of the splinters of them, they merged together and they created the Linke, or the Left Party. And Wagenknecht since then quickly emerged as one of the party's leading voices and the face of the German radical left. Her relationship with the Linke, however, grew increasingly strained over the years. While the party became captured by the kind of progressive neoliberalism that has infected, to one degree or another, all Western left-wing parties, Wagenknecht remained true to her old-school socialist roots. Eventually, in November 2019, Wagenknecht announced her resignation as parliamentary leader, citing burnout. 2 years later, in the federal elections, the Linke garnered less than 5% of ballots and lost nearly half its seats. Its worst result ever for Wagenknecht. This was not a surprise. Left, Wagenknecht argues, used to be synonymous with improving the lives of ordinary people forced to support themselves through their often backbreaking labor. However, today's progressive movement has come to be dominated by what Wagenknecht calls the lifestyle left, whose members no longer place social and political economic problems at the center of left-wing politics. In the place of such concerns, they promote questions regarding lifestyle, consumption habits, and moral attitudes. She further notes that far from being liberal, today's leftists tend to be viciously authoritarian. I mean, I don't see any lies in this. These so-called left-wing parties are all liberals now. I don't want to conflate between them. They are liberals. They're not really neoliberals, let's say, parties. And they really care about the outlook of everything. They want to show off that they are empathetic, but they're not empathetic. They want to pretend that they're humanitarian, but they're not humanitarian. They always like to do the gaslighting. They want to pretend things that they don't really believe in. But from outside, they always say, oh, we are anti-racist, anti-authoritarian, anti-this and that. But in practice, they are exactly what they say stand against. Like these parties, the Green, the SPD, those are the ones who are liberals, and they are authoritarian to the core when it comes to the alternative point of views, for example, myself included. They waged brutal campaigns against me, and I have no doubts that the Social Democratic Party and the Green Party, they were behind these campaigns. I know for sure. I have information from people who contacted me, and they received instructions to persecute me. and come after me. There are people who telling me this is a political campaign. It has nothing to do with your status here, because they wanted to deport me from Germany. Only because I have a different opinion, because I told them, look, the root cause of the refugee crisis, it's a big, what you're telling to your people, it's a big fat lie. What's happening in Syria is a regime change war. And because of the US meddling in Syria and destabilizing the country and sanctioning the people, impoverishing them, those are the reasons why people are fleeing the country. Why would anyone in 2024 flee Syria unless it's an economic reason, right? There is no active war now in Syria. I mean, Idlib, it's a hotspot, but it is isolated from the rest of the country. And the eastern shore of the Euphrates in the hands of the Americans, the government doesn't have a reach there. Uh, Except these places, the vast majority of these cities are relatively safe. And there is no, like, let's say, big influx of people. There is no reason for a big influx of people, but every day there are still people come to Germany, and they been accepted, right? So we have to really address the root cause of the refugee crisis, but they don't like to hear that, because it goes against their agenda. Their agenda was for economic. They wanted to receive these refugees for economic reasons, for demographic reasons, not because they were humanitarian. And as I mentioned, what's happening today in the Gaza Strip is the biggest proof of that. These people don't believe that the people in the Middle East are somehow equal to them. No, they don't believe in that. They see us as flies, and if we are killed, nothing happened, you know? And if they really cared about the people, they would also lift the sanctions against the millions of people in Syria, but they don't. And this talking point is completely triggers them, and they all of a sudden become authoritarian, and they want to come after you and prosecute you and do this and that. So I just want to mention a few more things about the Sahra Wagenknecht, which is important for you to know. Because, first of all, she was against the vaccine mandates and the lockdowns, for example, during the Corona times. But then she also questioned put the question of a detente with Russia at the center of her party's platform. On several occasions, she has highlighted how Germany's subordination to the US NATO proxy war strategy in Ukraine and refusal to engage in diplomatic talks with Russia is self defeating from an economic as well as geopolitical standpoint. So, not only is the oil and gas embargo against Russia the main reason for Germany's collapsing economy, but the government is, she told the Bundestag. More recently, she has strongly condemned the government's plan to deploy US long range missiles on German territory, and perhaps most dramatically challenged the omerta surrounding the Nord Stream attack. It's important to note that Wagenknecht views opposition to the proxy war against Russia as part of a much deeper rethinking of Germany's geopolitical strategy. It aims, as Wolfgang Streeck has written, is to free it from a geostrategic grip of the United States, guided by German national survival interests instead of Nibelung. What is this? Nibelungentreue, or loyalty to America's claim to global political domination. So finally, Wagenknecht has criticized the government's green and gender affirming policies, arguing that Germany's energy supply cannot currently be ensured by renewable energies alone, and voting against a bill passed by the German parliament earlier this year to make it easier to change one's legal gender. Your law, she says, turns parents and children into guinea pigs for an ideology that only benefits the pharmaceutical lobby. I mean, if you ask me, she is a based. She is a based politician when it comes to foreign policy, these vaccine mandates, and gender policies, etc. I don't know much about the economy, but I'm a foreigner living in Germany. What would I care more? My personal freedoms and foreign policy, not harming my country and not harming other countries in the Middle East, and stop the slaughterhouse in the Gaza Strip. I think those are brilliant places to start the this I would say mayhem in our countries. Um, on the other hand, we have the alternative for Germany. They, of course, won big time in these two federal states, and they secured over 30% of the votes in both states, becoming the first party in Thuringia. Despite this strong showing, the party remains isolated because nobody wants to form a coalition with the AfD in these federal countries. They are popular, yeah, but they're unable to translate these successes into political power because other parties don't want to form a coalition with them. So this is mostly what's happening in these federal countries, in my opinion. But this shows that the migration crisis remains the mother of all domestic policy problems in Germany, and that the inability to manage migration effectively has endorsed public trust in traditional parties. So the AfD's success can be attributed largely to its hardline stance on migration, a position that has gained traction even among former left-wing voters who now support the Sahra Wagenknecht party. Also, this development, these electoral victories in these two federal states, suggests that migration will dominate the upcoming federal elections, which is next year, turning them into a de facto referendum on Germany's migration policies. But opposition to the government's belligerent approach to the Ukraine war clearly also played a role, especially among younger people, because Wagenknecht has centered her platform around opposition to NATO, the deployment of US long-range missiles on German territory, and the question of detente with Russia. So the most interesting takeaway from the elections probably was the emergence of a new and unique in the European panorama left-right populist spectrum in the form of the AfD and the Sahra Wagenknecht coalition, which collectively make up almost 50% of the vote in these two federal states. This underscores this dissatisfaction with the established parties is even more significant than what right populist parties alone are able to capture, a lesson for other countries as well. Finally, the Sahra Wagenknecht coalition has ruled out forming a regional coalition government with the AfD, so what they call the far left. Sahra Wagenknecht still refusing or ruling out forming a regional coalition with what they call the far right, the AfD. This could be understandable from a tactical point of view, because many dissatisfied voters from the center and the left are turning to Sahra Wagenknecht precisely because it is not the AfD. But in the future, the mood might shift, especially next year's federal elections. If the establishment refuses to respond to popular concerns, the demand for a left-right populist front could grow, and this means next year. Meanwhile, the fact that both ends of the political spectrum are converging on similar migration policies suggests that the issue may be approached more pragmatically rather than through the lens of morality. So, those were the elections and the election results and the implications on the domestic policies, on the economy, on the migration crisis, and also on foreign policy, especially when it comes to Ukraine. There is not much talk yet about Gaza, about Palestine. I hope that this would be also a center of a discussion soon, especially in the next year's elections. I have no hope at all from the AfD to speak what is right about Palestine. But I have hopes in the Sahra Wagenknecht to say what is right about Palestine. That would be amazing, because many people, especially the migrants, let's say, from the Middle East, those who were persuaded by the Green Party, Social Democratic Party, oh, Habibi, come, we're pro-refugees, come, we will give you some jobs, some opportunities in the party, we give you fame, we invite you to conferences, you will receive a scholarship, this and that. They included them in the parties. But in my opinion, people who are still part of these political parties, the Greens and the SPD and the CDU, they're shameless. How can you be part of these political parties who are, first, if you're a Syrian, they're sanctioning your own people, and secondly, now they are complicit with Israel in this ongoing slaughterhouse in the Gaza Strip? You can criticize the AfD as much as you want and call them names as much as you want, but they're not in the coalition and they're not voting for sending guns and weapons there. And similar applies to the Sahra Wagenknecht coalition. But I have no hope, as I said, from the AfD to change its course or have a unique foreign policy approach on Palestine. They're just going to be like Donald Trump, basically. And unfortunately, this is really unfortunate. I think I had sometimes some hopes in the foreign policy because of AfD, because they were anti-war in Syria, and they wanted to lift the sanctions, and they wanted to open channels with Syria again. And similarly with Russia, they don't want to impose sanctions, they want to lift the sanctions, and they want to have good relationship with Russia and buy gas from China, which will positively impact on us, the ordinary people in Germany. But when it comes to Israel, they're completely like they're completely on the side of Israel, and that's, in my opinion, really shame. I'm really frustrated about that. I have friends from the AfD. I have friends from the Sahra Wagenknecht coalition. Unfortunately, I don't have friends from other parties because they completely think I'm a horrible person. I'm a dictatorship fanboy, etc., etc. They completely misjudge me. But the people from the AfD and from the Sahra Wagenknecht, they were very kind to me. I had no issues personally with them, although I'm a migrant myself. And I can discuss with them foreign policy. Even on Israel, they listen to me. They don't really judge me and say, we don't want to talk to you any longer. You're not with Israel, you know? But when it comes to the official foreign policy, it is what it is. This is the unfortunate truth that we are living on during these days. Somebody is just says something about Palestine, just out of respect for the freedom of speech on this channel. I don't want to block this person called Gonzo Johnny. Everybody is free to say whatever he or she wants, but maybe this person has to look into the mirror and probably see nothing but a soulless person. Anyways, guys, this was the live streaming of today. I'm very happy that I was able to do it. I postponed it 10%. I was not really feeling well today, but I wanted to do this live streaming anyways. I invited a member who holds a position in the Sahra Wagenknecht coalition to the show today, and he couldn't make it today because he had a meeting between 5 to 6 o'clock in the afternoon. However, he promised to check his schedule tonight when he goes back to his home, and he will check if he can participate tomorrow, which is Tuesday, or Wednesday, because on Thursday, I have to repeat this now, today, tomorrow, and after tomorrow, starting from Thursday for 1 week, I'm unable to make live streamings because finally I want to go to 1 week of vacation and rest my head and my body and everything, my soul. It's been a really tough year for me, lots of family issues, and I was really tired. So I want to go for 1 week of vacation starting from next Thursday. But before that, hopefully I can make this live streaming and live conversation with a member of the Sahra Wagenknecht coalition. Toi for that. And if you're new, guys, please subscribe and stay tuned for this channel. Check if you're subscribed, because 60% of the people watching this content are not subscribers. That would be great support for me. Also, if you want to support the independent work I'm doing, you can become a patron. The link is scrolling on the screen, patreon.com/Syriana Analysis. You can buy me coffee per month and support this independent work, independent content. Everything here is independent. And if you care about independent journalism and supporting independent journalists and commentators like myself, I encourage you to become a patron. So we will see you tomorrow, guys, Tuesday, 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Eastern American Time. Peace be upon you, upon your families. Salam.